Hey guys, welcome back. So today we'll talk about test automation using CSA's Selenium framework. So before going into details, we'll basically try to understand the basics of the automation. What is C Sharp and why we are using C Sharp and what is its basic advantage. So we'll try to understand what is the C Sharp programming language. C Sharp is also known as C Sharp, is a multi-platform object-oriented programming language developed by Microsoft, which naturally provides native support for Windows applications. It is derived from both C++ and Java, incorporating elements from each. C hash is designed for the common language infrastructure and is a robust language supporting key object-oriented programming concepts such as inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. Additionally, it features multi-threading capabilities similar to Java. C hash also includes garbage collection, which helps manage memory more efficiently. So in the right side, you can see in the picture like C hash code, VBNet code, and F hash code. All these are compiled by common language infrastructure, which is basically used to convert the code to a machine readable code that can be executed in the current platform. So it's basically done, whatever code you're writing, it's been compiled through common language infrastructure, and then common language runtime. So you can see it is converted into 010011 format. Why is C Sharp useful for automation testing? Basic advantage of C Sharp is it is high efficiency in Windows ecosystem. C hash is highly efficient when working with the Windows environment, and it is also memory efficiency. C Sharp consumes less memory compared to Java, and another advantage is the code will be optimized in .NET. The .NET framework enables code optimization and allows developers to write less code, which enhances performance. Inbuilt functions. C hash offers a variety of inbuilt functions, speeding up the development and debugging process. The Java versus C hash efficiency. The Java's efficiency normally relies on the just-in-time compiler, which is a part of Java runtime environment, JRE. The JIT compiler invokes the JMM immediately, which can be shown down the program. And another difference is language binding difference. There are notable differences in how Java and C Sharp handle language binding, such as WebDriver to iWebDriver, web element to iWeb element, add find by to find by annotation, package to namespace, import to using or references. So from this slide you can easily understand like C hash program is supposed to perform better in Windows environment because it has been supported by Windows Microsoft.NET, and also it has inbuilt functions which offer better performance in development and debugging process. Now, to do the C Sharp Selenium automation, you will need basic technical stack used for automation. One is something called as Selenium WebDriver if you want to do web automation, and NUnit 3 test adapter you will need for creating a test framework, something normally which you use TestNG in Java or JUnit in Java. So for generating your HTML test reports, you need extend reports, and definitely you need C hash coding language. For project and dependency management, you need NuGet package manager. It is equivalent to Maven in Java, which is normally used as a build tool. And obviously you need a better IDE called IDE, either a free or licensed version, Microsoft Visual Studio Community 2019 or onwards. Now Before we go into much detail like framework structure, like what is n unit and why we need n unit. So before you actually create a project, you might be looking for n unit Visual Studio template to continue unit testing with n unit in Visual Studio, because you need these files or this extension which is required to be added on your project to start your automation work. Something like nunit 3 test adapter DLL files, selenium.com.chrome.webdriver, selenium firefox.webdriver, selenium.support, selenium.webdriver, base page object model, .NET Selenium extras, .NET Selenium extras wait helpers, and page objects. These extensions are basically useful for setting up your nunit test automation framework or environment in Visual Studio. Now, where you will get these extensions? Like normally, you can it will get downloaded by NuGet package manager automatically. Okay. Now, nunit testing framework. So you need to understand like what is this nunit unit testing framework. So it is basically used for all .NET languages, initially ported from JUnit. It is an open source framework designed by Microsoft.NET and functions similarly to JUnit or TestNG in Java. NUnit is written in C#. Some of the key features are like parallel test execution. Tests can be run in parallel. You might have came across with TestNG, which is also used in running the parallel test execution in Java, right? Category based testing. Each test cases can be assigned one or more categories for selective execution. Test order control. Order of test execution can be specified. Parameterization supports parameterized test. Custom attributes, like NUnit uses custom attributes to identify tests, of all of which are part of NUnit framework namespace. Now, these are some of the list of attributes that you will need to understand before you start writing the framework. So, test fixture attribute is normally used. You will see in your code like one-time setup and one-time teardown. Test setup, teardown, category, author, ignore, test case source, order, description, parallelizable. Some of these attributes you might have heard earlier in Java, like you can see like one-time setup, one-time teardown, like add before and add after annotation you might have seen in TestNG, right? Then teardown also you will see like at after method, at after suit. These kind of hooks you might have came across in TestNG also. Similarly in NUnit also we'll be using this kind of attributes or annotation to write your code. Okay. So before we go into detail, like we'll talk about the architecture flow diagram, how actually you will build up your CI/CD for the Selenium C# test automation. So briefly, I have a flow chart like how you will be creating your test framework. So you will have a driver script, which is test scripts, and it will be linked with one-time setup or launch browser, and then it will also have one-time teardown, browser close, extend, report flush, and listeners. One-time setup launch browser will have basically instantiation of Chrome browsers or Firefox or Edge, whatever browser you're using, and then you will have your page methods. Let's say you are using page methods, let's say login or search or admin. These are 3 page methods and corresponding its page object classes. And then you will separate out your base class having all the generic functions and base methods and Selenium set and get methods, and it also have a reference package. reference directory where you will be storing your app config file and log4j configurations, and finally you will have an output mm, directory where you will save your HTML report and log file and screenshots. This is your briefly like a flowchart, like how your framework should look like, or framework nomenclature. Now once you have developed your framework, you can see like how CI/CD will work. So assuming developer will create a merge and pull request to the Git repository, then you will basically create a webhook trigger to basically custom your Jenkins build job. So your Jenkins build job will be connected to the AWS via source code AWS pipeline, and you can configure your AWS code pipeline using IAM, like Identity Access Management, and using EC2 instance, Jenkins EC2 instance, where you will actually run your Jenkins server. You can configure it so that EC2 can access your Jenkins, and code pipeline can also access your Jenkins server inside virtual machine. Once your build is triggered, you will see your test automation will automatically pick it up, and once it starts running, you will see it will build the source file like .sln file, and using NuGet package restore and init, and then ms build. We'll talk about this at the end of the slides presentation regarding Jenkins configuration. Once you have ran your Jenkins tests, you will see you can publish your artifacts directly to S3. Okay, and once it reaches to S3, you can basically configure an SNS, like symbol notification service, to basically send an email notification to the users. That's basically your CI/CD pipeline, which you can create like this. Now let's move to the next step, like designing pattern. What is a designing pattern for creating an object repository for web elements? So for C# also you will be using a concept of page object model design pattern. Now it will have a page class structure. Each web page will have a corresponding page class, and for web elements, handling web elements on the page and methods that interact with these elements. So you will create page methods, and you will create page objects in a separate directory, and then you will configure them so that they can connect. Then you can basically create page factory. So page factory class. So basically to create it, you can import OpenQA Selenium support page objects through NuGet package manager, and use the page factory.init elements method to easily locate elements within the page class. So in my framework, I have used basically page factory concept because I find it's a very little faster and robust compared to without page factory, and I've used add finds by annotation, and there's also one concept of caching elements in page factory. So you can, like, page factory supports storing elements in caching memory using the cache lookup annotation, so that you will find your automation little faster than the concept without using page factory. So let's move to the next slide. Now once you have done all your installations and configurations, now it's time to basically set up a unit testing project in Microsoft Visual Studio. So you can install and open a Microsoft Visual Studio using community version. If you don't have licensed version, then you can create a new project. From the main window, you can go to select file, new project. In the left hand pane, you can basically select Visual C hash and then test, and then choose unit test project console application. Enter the project details, name, location and framework, and click on OK button. Now you can add your Selenium references from the NuGet package manager, all the bindings which you have installed earlier. And there are two popular methods to reference Selenium's in Chash. One is downloading the DLLs. You can directly download the DLLs from seleniumhq.org and add the downloaded DLLs as a references to your project. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to NuGet package manager, right click on references in your project and manage NuGet packages. Search for and install the necessary Selenium packages. Now include required NuGet packages. To proceed with framework creation, several NuGet packages need to be included in the solution. Right click on references and select manage NuGet packages. Install the required packages. Now verify references. After completing the installation process, ensure that your references are correctly added, and your references should include the necessary Selenium and Inuit packages. So you in the right side you can see in the picture, like there is a in your project you can go to the references drop down, and you will see all your installations done properly or not. You will see everything will be coming in the drop down, and you will see like all the packages are mentioning here. Okay, next slide will go. So once you have, so this is basically your setup, and then this presentation will not talk about how to write the code. Actually, this is basically a technical presentation. We'll talk in some other presentation how to write C hash code. Now once you have configured and written your code, next step is how you will execute the tests. Basically you can execute definitely in your local system, but expectation is you should be executing from a Jenkins or any of the other CI/CD pipeline. Now to create a CI/CD pipeline, there are different ways you can create. You can basically use any of the cloud platform like AWS or Azure. Okay, so if you have chosen to use AWS, then you can configure an EC2 instance. So to basically run your Jenkins, to create an instance, to create a EC2 instance, you need to basically launch a new EC2 instance free tier. So if you have logged into AWS, you can easily configure and create a Windows EC2 instance there. So and then you can select the Windows server with a minimum of instance type T2 medium. T2 medium will be usually 4 GB to 8 GB operating system RAM. So that should be enough to run your automation tests, and then you can configure security groups to make sure that you can connect to your Jenkins server from locally. So to do that, create and configure inbound rules for a security group to allow access to necessary ports. For if you have created a Windows in EC2 instance, then use port 8080, which allow access for Jenkins, both internal and external access to the admin URL. Port 80 that will allow HTTP access, port 3389 allowing RDP access to a Windows server, and port 443 is allowing HTTPS access. Now access to Jenkins server. How will you, once Jenkins server is created, how will you access them? Once the instance is running, you can connect to Jenkins via RDP. Then you just get the EC2 IP address and connect via RDP. To start the Jenkins, create a Jenkins desktop icon to launch the application once you are inside the virtual machine. Now next step is create and configure Jenkins project. Now once you have RDP to the Windows and installed all the tools, connect to the EC2 server and use RDP client to connect to the EC2 server. Authenticate using password and key pair.pem associated with the instance. So you will need a .pem file, okay, to connect to your EC2 server. You can use puttygen basically generate your PEM file or a password to connect to your EC2 instance. And then once you're connected, you can install all the automation tools. Let's say for C# you need MS Build or NUnit or Git. You need to connect all those. And then Selenium. These things you have to install there. And you also need to install Tomcat server. So basically, to install Tomcat server, steps will be like opening a browser and navigate to the Apache Tomcat website. Download the 64 version Windows zip file, log into the AWS EC2 instance and unzip the downloaded file, navigate to the Tomcat bin folder and run startup.bat. Access the Tomcat server by opening IP address :8080. Okay. Now, once you have set up the environmental system variables, you can configure the system variables to make sure that inside the virtual machine, to make sure that it gets the correct path to access the files. Now, once everything is done, you can basically configure and the Jenkins project, that is create a Jenkins freestyle project, configure the Git repository URL and set up the build section. Now, how will you set up the build section? So this slide will basically talk about setting up Jenkins for .NET projects. So once you have navigated to the Jenkins dashboard, okay, then go to manage plugins, like access Jenkins and go to manage plugins. Install the Jenkins MS Build plugin. To build the .NET project, you will need MS Build plugin. You can install it and download required packages like NuGet package, MS Build, and NuGet console runner from Chocolatey. So Chocolatey is a repository which allows you to install the packages through Windows PowerShell by running commands. So you can run the below commands to install the NuGet and build tools like choco install NuGet.command line and choco install Microsoft build tools. So these are very easy commands which will install your packages, required packages to run the Jenkins project. So assuming you have installed everything, next is you can complete the build step. So in the build configuration page, you can add a step to execute the batch command. So like use the following command to run NUnit tests. So you will basically, this is a single command, you will basically call your NUnit3 console.exe which you have installed through Chocolatey, and then you will call your project, your C# project, bin, debug, and the project name.dll file which you will call to run your automation tests in the console. This one single file will basically run all your tests using the Windows batch command. Now once you have completed the post build section, once you have completed the execution of the project, you can configure the post build section to basically publish your reports like NUnit test result report. So to do that, you need to basically go to the plugin section, Jenkins plugin, and install the NUnit test report plugin to make sure you can see the test results. Okay, just do that. And there is another way you can basically configure the post build section, action is instead of printing the result in HTML, in NUnit HTML format, you can basically configure your AWS S3 storage to make sure your results are stored in the cloud S3, and then it gets emailed to your inbox with the HTML report. So to do that, you need to basically set up some configurations in AWS. First is you need to send email notification with SNS. To do that, You need to configure AWS symbol notification service to send an email notification. Now next is you need to configure IAM role. To create a IAM role with permission, you need to give like full access for AWS SNS, AWS code pipeline and S3 notification. Unless you give full access, it will not be able to access your Jenkins data. So make sure you give proper IAM roles, and then obviously you need to have a S3 bucket created to make sure your data gets loaded into the S3 bucket, uploaded in the S3 bucket, and you need to configure S3 publisher in Jenkins. So to do that, in the post build action, you need to basically, before going post build actions, you need to install the S3 publisher plugin in Jenkins, and you need to configure the S3 publisher as a post build action and select public artifacts to S3 bucket in configuration. Now create SNS topic. Create an SNS topic in AWS simple notification service for managing notifications. Now this can be done in the Amazon simple notification service portal. Similarly, you can create an event notification in the S3 portal. You can set up an event notification S3 bucket to trigger action based on bucket events. So these are briefly minimum setup you need to make sure you can get email notifications after each time your automation is executed in Jenkins, and instead of going to the virtual machine accessing your reports, you get fresh reports in the emails. So that's definitely, which is a good thing. So that's come to the end of the slide. So in my channel, I'll definitely post all the supporting links which you can go through and learn more about it. And if you like my video, please do like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.